In this video, we're going to give a rundown on how I skin, flesh, and stretch muskrats into a finished dried pelt to either be sent to a tannery or be brought to a fur buyer. So let's get started. Equipment that you'll need to achieve this is you will need a knife for skinning, a sharpener for the knife, a fleshing tool. Some people use side cutters for cutting off the front feet. I personally do not. You'll need a stretcher of some sort. If you have wood, you have to either use a staple gun or use push pins, whichever method you prefer. I use wire stretchers predominantly. I just have a handful of the wood ones. Just bought them years ago, and I don't even know if I've ever put a rat up on them. I've always just done wire. It works best in my mind, at least for what I do. Some people, they do modified wire stretchers where they'll take some corrugated plastic from like an election sign and they'll cut it to size and they'll duct tape it on about halfway to where they can stretch the rat on the stretcher and they can pin it in place. That's people that usually do that. They already had the stretchers and they just wanted to be able to pin it. When it comes to selling, country buyers typically prefer wire. Auction houses, people typically say you use wood. I know years ago, I don't know if it's still the case, I believe it was NAFA, FHA, they had scanners in which they'd send them through and then the pelt was determined by square, I don't know if it's square inches or centimeters, whatever, but it was surface area. And that's how they sized them. As compared to in the country, they size them by length. But I know like a lot of country buyers, they don't like how thick the wood rats are. They don't stack nice. They don't store as nice as compared to the wire rats. And I know some country buyers, they even say that when it comes to a rat, they'll even just buy them by weight, to where the stretcher doesn't matter. The weight of the rat's the weight of the rat, regardless of the length. So if you want to use a side cutter to cut off the front feet, it's pretty simple. All you do is just cut them off. Come right below the ankle, snip them off. Like I said, I don't do that. Some people, they like doing that. To me, I have no reason to do that. If you sit down and you have 200-300 rats to skin, it takes a lot of time to skin or cut all those feet off, and it's an unnecessary step in my mind. So my skinning station, what I use is I just sit in a little folding chair, and on the wall I have a jumper cable clip attached, which I stick the rat foot into, and I just have that screwed into the wall right there. Got some cardboard on there to help keep the blood off the wall. And typically I'll have a bucket underneath me. I don't have a lot of rats, so I'm not going to do that. But typically I'll have a bucket right there, and as I skin, I'll just drop the carcasses in. So we're just going to run through. We're going to skin the 3 rats. So to start out, I'm sitting down. I got the back foot in the clip. I take the tail and I put it in my left hand on the outside. I take my knife and I stick it in right at the ankle, and I run through and I try to pull out, run it from ankle to ankle, and I pull out. So I run my knife, I stick it through, and I work it around, and it sticks out the other side. I poke it out the ankle, and then I cut all the way up to the tail. And then with that, I have the vent cut, and that's already open. So then I take it, and then I pinch behind the tail. I grab the skin and I get it to where I can stick between the skin and the tail, and then that gets cut. And then I stick my thumb down and I start opening, and then I set my knife on my lap and I use my fingers and I open up as much as I can on the back, and I'll even dig my fingers down in there. Undo the clip, and I take the rat with my fingers still in there. I grab the head, and then I start pulling the fur up. I push the head down and I roll it down. Try and show as best as I can. And then I take the fur and I pull it back up over the rat's head. So all I'm doing is peeling the back off. And then I take my hand and I just open my hand up in there. Then I take my left hand, I grab its belly with my thumb, and I push from the skin down onto the meat, and I use my right hand and I twist the fur. It's just kind of a twisting motion. Take it and I flip it over, and then I pull apart, and I'll stick my thumb through when I can. Then I take it and I pull up until I get to the hindquarters, and then there'll be an opening on each side. And I take my thumb and I pull. I just pull it off each leg. And then from there, I take it, I lay it on its back, I put it over my knee, and I grab right above the rib cage, and I grab the fur, and then I do like a downward pushing motion each direction. And then that exposes the legs. So then from there, I take my thumb, I stick it between the leg and the fur, and it'll just pop right through. And then I pull, and then you'll be able to pop it off. Be careful if you twist too in a certain direction, the claws will rip the fur. So same thing, other side, pull, and it just pops right off. And then it's already at the ears, so then from there, just take your knife, cut the ear, one more quick little pull, and then you're at the eye. Then you come to the other side, and there might be a little meat on here. If you want, you could even take your knife and you can scrape that off real quick. It's got to get scraped off regardless. And then once the eyes are cut, then I take my left hand and my right hand holding the skull, left hand on the fur, and I give her a little twisting motion until it's pulled all the way on the nose, pulled all the way on the bottom. Then I take my knife and I stick it in the right hand side. I guess it's the left hand side. When I'm looking at it, it's the right, but it's technically the left hand side of the rat. I cut that open, flip it to the other side. Do the same thing, and all it does is loosen the fur from the jowls. And then I give her another little motion, pull it to the nose, cut back as far as I can to get as much cartilage on there, and then I just pull off. And that rat is skun, and now we got the hide. So that was a quick little how-to, and now we're just going to run through these other two rats, and we're going to kind of see it in motion. Sometimes there'll be a little bit of feces in there. I'll just take it, I'll pull that out real quick just so it doesn't get in the way. I haven't skun many rats for quite a few years now. I think it's going on 2 years. I like skinning rats. It's nice and relaxing. It's fun to be able to sit down and just unwind and skin some rats. You can really fall into a rhythm. What sometimes people say is when they're skinning towards the tail, they try to get a little bit of tail on there just to ensure that they're getting all the fur. Then they'll even use that piece of tail to hook it on the wire stretcher, blah, blah, blah. I won't worry about that too much. At the end of the day, I personally don't think it will make much of a difference. This rat is just slippery. It is not peeling. Come on, there we go. There you go. So this is how I go about fleshing. I just use a fox board. I just sit up against the table like this. Put the rat on. Gotta grab my fleshing tool. So try to show as best as I can. So underneath each of the arms or the leg holes, there's gonna be some fat. There's some fat up on the head. The entire skirt, there's gonna be some fat. And then on the back, behind the shoulders, there'll be some. So typically, it's pretty simple. Just gonna get everything that you can. Start at the top, work your way down. So then, yeah, that's it fleshed. All you're doing is getting all the excess fat and muscle tissue off. There's going to be a saddle on there. That's just going to be a little thin membrane of muscle tissue. It's nothing to be too worried about. Start up top, get around the jowls, get around the leg. This is the one, I can tell this is the one that I did with the side cutters because the legs aren't how I'm usually used to them. When I do the side cutters, or at least when I used to in the past, it seemed like the leg holes were just a little bit longer than what I wanted them to be. It's a shame there isn't a rat market like there used to be. Because sitting down just putting up rats, it's honestly about as fun as it gets. It doesn't get much better. Then once you're done fleshing, you got a nice little pile of weasel bait, or you can put it in a bobcat box, or put it down a dirt hole, whatever. Just a nice little batch of fatty meat. Works well for bait. Yeah. About as simple and basic as it gets right there. And like I said, I use the wire stretchers to start. Get the rat slid over. Bring her down. Once the rat's on there, center it. I'm trying to focus on filming and doing this at the same time. So I got that on there. And the first thing I do is I flip that nose up and over. So I take a clothespin. I put a clothespin on there, and then from there, here I'll show you why I do that. That's not on there. As I'm pulling along, sometimes that nose will flip over and it'll fold back like that. So that's why we do the clothespin. It's either when you're pulling it or sometimes as it's drying. And then that's on there. And then I take the little point on each side and I just twist it down, and then I take the hook, I hook it in, I do that to both sides. Let me show you. It's both sides, and then If you're just going to have it tanned, you don't need to do this. But when it comes to selling for a fur, so they measure to the lowest point. So if you can, they're supposed to be highest point. But I take it and I just pull it down on the side. And I take the clothespin and I hook it on there. I do it to both sides. It can get you an extra ½ inch or so, and sometimes that can make or break you on the size of the rat. So we take that. We're going to hang it up top here. Show you that when we're done. It's really nice when you can sit down and you can do just a few hundred of them. A little onesie twosies, kind of whatever. And then with it, sometimes, like with the different stretchers, sometimes you'll have some, like if you buy used stretchers, some are a little skinnier, some are a little fatter. It's good to keep those skinny ones set aside in case you got some smaller rats. You want to try to stretch it just a hair further. And there we go. And they hang up there and they dry for a day or two, preferably 2-3 days. So then when you go to sell your rats, let's say to a country buyer, the buyer will take them, you flip them over, he'll take a look, he's inspecting for damages like that. That'd be a slight. That could be a bite mark. There's another slight. Just take it, flip it over, look for damage. Take it, flip it over, look for damage. They do that, and they just run through real quick. Just set all of the damaged ones to the side. You know, between the damage and the slights. They'll take their finger and they'll see how damaged that is, like that right there. See that? So that's a slight. Slight stands for slightly damaged. See, like. Run through. So then when it comes to sizing, these are the sizes. You have extra small, which is below 10, small, which is 10 to 11.5. From 11.5 to 13 is a medium, 13 to 14 is a large, 14 to 15.5 is extra large, 15.5 to 17 is extra large. Anything over 17 is an XXXL, triple XL, jumbo, whatever you want to call it. And then when they take them and they size them, they lay them on their back, because like I said earlier, they measure to the highest point. They take it and they hold it up, and that is above, and that is in the small mark. So then they take that, they throw it off to the side, and they make a pile of smalls. Take that right there, that's up higher. Yeah, put that right there. That's a large. So then they put that in a large pile. This one right there, it's pretty close to medium. They'd throw that in the medium pile. They're not there to help you. They're there to, do what makes them money. That's how it works. Throw that in the small pile. Go through. Right there, that's an XL. They just keep going through and then they sort them out. And then when it comes time, have them in piles of 10. They stack together nicely. This isn't quite 10, but take them, offset them, and just keep stacking them up.